What's up, heathens?
How y'all doing?
I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a video that claims this.
Likewise, atheists can say they just reject God, but they are still confronted with the inescapable problem of how to explain ultimate reality. Just as anarchists affirm the positive beliefs that anarchy is the best way to organize society, atheists affirm the positive belief that atheistic materialism is the best way to explain ultimate reality. In other words, atheists don't lack a belief in materialism. They are not skeptical of materialism. They think it's true.
No. Atheism is not just like anarchism. The point of atheism isn't to explain ultimate reality. At its core, atheism doesn't make a positive claim about anything. It just means that the person is not convinced that God does exist. Most of the positions that atheists hold are also held by religious people. But mainly that's because atheism is just a single answer to the question, do you believe that God exists? If you want to find out why this video is completely wrong about atheism and atheists, then please stay tuned. Alright, well, if you didn't know, there are many different types of atheists out there. Atheism itself, in the widest sense, is just a non-belief in a supernatural deity or deities. You can also be agnostic or gnostic on the position. Personally, I'm an agnostic atheist. While I don't believe in a God, I also don't know whether or not a God exists. Gnostic atheists, or hard atheists, make the positive assertion that no gods exist. That particular position would require you to show some proof that no gods exist. I think that position is just as tenable as Gnostic theism. So let us see what this guy has for us today.
Lately, a popular claim made by atheists is that atheism is simply a lack of belief in God. So when a theist comes along and says that atheists can't support their worldview, some atheists will say something like, we really don't have a worldview. We just lack a belief in God. Since we're not making any positive claims about the world, we don't have any burden of proof to support atheism. We just find the arguments for God to be lacking. Atheists are trying to redefine what their position is by reinventing what the word atheism means. As per the Merriam-Webster dictionary, atheist means believe that there is no God, as compared to agnosticism, which means a person who does not have a belief in God.
Alright, so right off the bat here, he tries to use a dictionary fallacy in order to tell atheists that they're attempting to redefine atheism. This is fallacious because dictionaries are descriptive, not prescriptive. So any definition that you would find in a dictionary is an attempt to describe how that word is being used currently. Now, that's why his initial image has the definition that he wants atheism to have. But then when he moves over to the Merriam-Webster definition, it has a definition that's very similar to the lack of belief definition. I would say this particular definition, the lack of belief, just is talking about a lack of a positive belief in something. And it definitely pains me to say it, but agnosticism has actually become a belief position. I disagree with agnosticism being a belief position, but that's currently how the word is being used. But seriously, as long as I understand how the person is using the label to describe what they believe, then the specific definitions of these words really don't matter all that much. I would say that understanding the person's position is more important than arguing over the definition of words.
What's lacking are good reasons to take their new definition seriously. If atheism is merely a lack of belief in God, then atheism is just a claim about the atheist's state of mind, not a claim about God's existence. The atheist is simply saying, I'm not psychologically convinced that God exists. So what? That offers no evidence for or against God. If atheism is merely a lack of belief in God, then rocks, trees and dogs are all atheists, because they too lack a belief in God. A true atheist believes that there is no God.
Well, I can see how there wouldn't be any issue with applying the label atheist to those things using that particular definition. Although I would say that renders the label meaningless because those things can't really have a belief position on anything. They just simply don't have the ability to hold beliefs. You could also claim that these things are agnostic because they don't know whether or not a God exists. And I mean, none of them collect stamps. So you could apply the label non-stamp collector to those items as well. But are these labels meaningful when you use them like this? No, they really aren't. Now, the core of this guy's issue is that atheists are not saying that atheism is a positive claim that no gods exist. But this definition that he thinks is new really isn't all that new. It's just literally dissecting the word. The prefix a in this particular context means without, and then theism means belief in God. So inherently, the word atheism just means without a belief in God or gods, or that you do not believe in a God or gods. So this definition that you're so pissy about is a reasonable definition because it's just literally what the word means. Certain philosophical definitions of atheism lean more towards the gnostic or hard atheist position. Colloquially, though, people just don't use it like that. So your whole diatribe on this particular position is pointless.
Frank Turek gives an analogy which I will use as well. Let's say two detectives arrive at the crime scene where someone was murdered, and after examining all the evidences, Detective 1 concludes Suspect C committed the crime. Detective 2 comes along and says, I lack a belief in Suspect C as the killer. You see, before he dismisses the conclusion of Detective 1, he has to provide evidence against Suspect C as the killer. But the difference here is Detective 2 have not only a lack of belief in Suspect C, but a lack of belief in all suspects. Detective 2 must provide better evidences to dismiss the suspects. He cannot just claim he lacks a belief that any of the suspects did it.
Oh my god, not this horseshit analogy again. What is it with these people reusing the same shitty analogies? I actually covered this analogy recently in a response to Frank Turek. Essentially, that bad analogy is not representative of atheism or detective work. It's okay for atheists not to know whether or not a God exists. You don't have to have a firm answer on that particular question. You can be agnostic as to whether or not you know that God exists, just like that detective can be agnostic on whether or not he knows who the suspects are. That analogy that he's using highlights the process of arresting and convicting innocent people. I mean, I'd consider them to be horrible detectives if they use that process. Good thing this fuck is not a detective, because things would be a lot worse than they are.
Atheists don't merely lack a belief in God because they are constantly trying to explain the world by offering supposed alternatives to God. The atheists write book after book insisting that there is no God, because of the Big Bang, multiple universes, and evolution. While none of those atheistic arguments succeed in providing there is no God, they do prove that atheists don't merely lack a belief in God. They believe in certain theories to explain reality without God. They believe in those theories because atheism is a worldview with beliefs just as much as theism is a worldview with beliefs. A worldview is a set of beliefs about the big questions in life, such as what is ultimate reality, who are we, what's the meaning of life, how should we live, what's our destiny, etc.
None of us have a destiny. That's a magical concept that inherently implies some supernatural divine plan for everything. Everything that you've listed in this particular section, I would include in a worldview, and I do agree that everybody has a worldview. What I don't agree with is the idea that atheism is a worldview. Atheism doesn't prescribe or dictate anything. It's just a single position. It can be part of a person's worldview, but it itself cannot be a worldview. Also, no atheist out there would suggest that evolution, the Big Bang, or multiverses would prove that God does not exist. I mean, atheists would probably use them to disprove certain claims about a specific version of God. But I mean, we wouldn't just broadly state that those things prove that God doesn't exist. And all of these scientific theories that you list here are held by both atheists and theists. You're simply just building a straw man and using it to misrepresent atheists and atheism.
To claim that atheism is not a worldview is like saying anarchy is not really a political position. As Bo Jin observes, an anarchist might say that he simply rejects politics, but he is still confronted with the inescapable problem of how human society is to organize itself, whether he likes the idea of someone being in charge or not. Likewise, atheists can say they just reject God, but they are still confronted with the inescapable problem of how to explain ultimate reality. Just as anarchists affirm the positive beliefs that anarchy is the best way to organize society, atheists affirm the positive belief that atheistic materialism is the best way to explain ultimate reality.
So here he's positing a false equivalency between atheism and anarchism. These things are not similar whatsoever. Anarchism is defined as a political philosophy and movement that makes the positive claim that all forms of involuntary or coercive hierarchy are bad. And atheism just doesn't make any positive assertions about God. I would contend that anarchists do have an answer for the questions that you proposed here. About how human society should organize and who should be in charge. That would be no organization and nobody would be in charge. The aim of atheism isn't to construct an entire worldview, just a small portion of a worldview. And atheistic materialism, or just materialism for, normal fucking people, is the best explanation so far. If you can definitively prove that supernatural or spiritual things actually exist, then I know I would admit that they do exist. But all of the evidence up until this point has shown us that natural processes are the cause of things that happen in this reality. These natural processes do not require supernatural intervention in order for those processes to work. Until you can show that these natural processes require a suspension of the natural order of reality in order to function, then why should I accept your supernatural claims? I shouldn't.
In other words, atheists don't lack a belief in materialism. They are not skeptical of materialism. They think it's true. As Philip Johnson said, he who is a skeptic in one set of beliefs is a true believer in another set of beliefs. Lacking a belief in God doesn't automatically establish materialism any more than lacking a belief in atheism automatically establishes Christianity. No atheist would say they're a Christian has made a good case because he lacks a belief in materialism. Everyone has the burden of proof to support his or her position.
That's literally not how anything fucking works. There is evidence of material things, all around us. There is literally no evidence for the supernatural realm. We can touch and see shit in reality. That is the evidence for materialism. What evidence do you have that the supernatural exists? Oh, fucking nothing? Okay. Until you can provide some actual evidence, I will continue to not believe that shit. I have the burden of proof when I say that Christianity is illogical and ahistorical. I have a burden of proof when I say that the God of the Bible does not exist. I don't have the burden of proof when I say that I don't believe that God exists. This guy, just like Frank Turk and all the other apologists, are trying to put atheism on the same playing field as theism. Theism makes the positive claim that God does exist, and so they shoulder the burden of proof.
Atheists must make a positive case that only material things exist. The I merely lack a belief in God definition leads to a contradictory result. As Dr. Richard Howe points out, this definition of atheism entails the quirky conclusion that atheism is logically compatible with theism. Here's why. If lacking a belief in God is the definition of atheism, and not there is no God, then atheism is true even if God really exists, because it's only a state of their mind. A true atheist is someone who believes there is no God. And atheists have the burden of proof to show how materialism is true and reality can be explained without God.
Jesus fuck. He's conflating a description of somebody's beliefs with a positive claim about something. So you basically said that two different people can hold two different positions on a single topic. Yeah, I have no issue with that. Atheism doesn't say anything about whether or not we know that God exists. That's why the labels agnostic and gnostic exist. Atheism and theism is just about what a person doesn't believe or does believe. Atheists do have evidence for materialism, but just because you're an atheist doesn't inherently mean that you are a materialist. It's possible to be an atheist and not a materialist. But even so, we have plenty of evidence for material things existing, and we have literally no evidence for the supernatural existing.
You see, the reason why some use this new definition is because taking a position in proving there is no God fails miserably every time. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. In Romans 1:20.
Oh boy, that's some pure, uncut, high-grade circular fucking logic you got there, buddy. That kind of logic will rot your brain and make you say dumb shit like, invisible things are clearly seen. If they're invisible, they can't be seen, motherfucker. That is the whole fucking point of invisibility. But seriously though, I agree that trying to prove that something does not exist is near impossible to do. Luckily, that is not what most atheists mean when they take up the atheist position. This also isn't a new position. It's been the definition of atheism for a long time. Well, heathens, that's all that I have for you today. I'm recording in Tennessee, but we should be back in a regular studio and everything like that starting this week. So I hope that you heathens will go down below, leave me a comment with what you thought about this guy's video. Did you have the same sentiments as I did, or do you lean a different direction? Let me know down below. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens!